Hi, I'm Peter Reynolds, and welcome to Pros and Conversations, the podcast that explores what it takes to be successful, whether you're from the world of business, science, or the arts. Today, we're diving into an issue that impacts individuals, families, and entire communities: reintegration after incarceration. Too often, people who have been involved in the criminal justice system are met with closed doors when they try to rebuild their lives. In this episode, we'll be talking about how businesses can play a powerful role in helping individuals reintegrate into society. This conversation is part of our Community Impact series, where we explore how entrepreneurs and businesses can support their local communities. Because giving back isn't just the right thing to do, it also makes good business sense. And someone who brings both sense and sensibility we need for this episode is my co-host, marketing consultant Damon Adachi. Damon, good to see you again.
Great to be here. This has been an interesting journey on this Community Impact series. You know, it's not necessarily right in my wheelhouse, but it's very engaging, and it's always interesting to hear how we can be more involved.
Well, last time we talked about how businesses could use food drives to give back, but I can imagine hiring someone with a criminal record can feel different for many, rightly or wrongly. There may be that sense of perceived risk.
Yeah, sure. There's obviously some stigma involved, which we are looking to address, investigate, and hopefully overcome.
Absolutely, because everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their life and have a second chance.
I'm sure I will need it soon.
Or third.
Maybe third. Third would be good too.
Well, luckily, we have two experts with us today to help dispel some of the myths and misconceptions around this topic. Kelly Potvin is Executive Director of the Elizabeth Fry Society, an organization dedicated to supporting women and gender-diverse people affected by the justice system. And Tina Eldridge is Executive Director of Rittenhouse, and someone with first-hand experience on the challenges women face trying to reintegrate after incarceration. Kelly, Tina, welcome to Pros and Conversations.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Kelly, maybe I could start with you. For those who are not familiar, can you tell us about the Elizabeth Fry Society, what you do and who you serve?
Sure. We're an organization located in Toronto, and we support women in conflict with the law and women who are at risk of being in conflict with the law. When I say women, I'm inclusive of all women, including gender diverse people. We've been doing this work in the city of Toronto for almost 75 years. We're coming up to our 75th anniversary. We support women who are on release through a federal halfway house. So that particular program is contracted with Correction Services Canada. So women who are doing a federal sentence can access parole by coming to a halfway house. And if their home community is Toronto, they would possibly come to our halfway house. And around that service, we've built counseling programs, employment programs, housing programs, all of the things that women need all the kind of services that someone might need to wrap around them to successfully reintegrate after they're coming out of an institution. Now, we also support women who are at risk of being in conflict with the law. So, and that is a huge group of women in the city of Toronto. It's women who have mental health addictions, women who are racialized, women who have histories of trauma. All of those factors, also women who are homeless, all of those factors increase your likelihood of coming into conflict with the law.
That's terrific, and I definitely want to talk more about the programs offered by the Elizabeth Fry Society. But quickly, just move over to Tina. I wanted to talk a little bit about Rittenhouse and the work that you do there.
For sure. Well, thanks for having us. Rittenhouse was a very small grassroots organization that started in 1998. And our work is kind of twofold. We do public education around abolition and transformative justice, and then direct prisoner support for people in prisons and their families.
I'd like maybe to ask both of you, talking a little bit about the barriers that face, women who've been involved with the criminal justice system, trying to reintegrate in society. Kelly, perhaps we could start with you.
The first thing that I want to say is that for someone who has been incarcerated, being incarcerated in this country is a very traumatic experience. I think that the general public believes that we have a fair and equitable system, and that people go to prison, that, they are somehow people who've done a crime and they need to do the time. I think, generally speaking, Canadians believe that our prisons provide supports and services for people to get better, to rehabilitate, and that's factually untrue. There are many ways in which our prison system does not reach the level of the Geneva Convention for treatment of prisoners. There are many cases before the courts where our prison system has failed people. And the Elizabeth Fry societies and places like Rittenhouse, we're trying to hold correction services accountable to being an institution that actually provides supports. So the system is broken. Being incarcerated is a traumatic experience. Women who are incarcerated are at great risk of being sexually assaulted by guards. There are very few programs that operate inside. They are operated by members of Corrections Services Canada, so it's not necessarily a safe place to disclose your feelings. There is not access to treatment or therapy or anything. So if something that led you to commit whatever offense that you were incarcerated for had to do with some sort of trauma, and for women, the correlation between unresolved trauma and criminal activity is super high. It's very high. It's almost at 90%. So if that's what sent you to prison, you're going to go to a Canadian federal institution where you will be re-traumatized, because it's not a walk in the park, and you will not get any help for any of the issues that sent you to be incarcerated. So if I focus on only how does, say, eFRI provide supports and services to help people successfully reintegrate, I'm only looking at half the picture, because really what we want to do is prevent people from going to prison. And abolish prisons in my dream. And if I can't abolish prisons, then change them into a service that actually helps people. The current prison system that we have is sadly disappointing, and I think more people need to know how horrible our prison system is in Canada, and I think it would change people's opinions of people who've been incarcerated.
So beyond what you're able to do in support of inmates and people that are looking to reintegrate, what sort of advocacy work are you able to do to proactively try and change these systemic problems?
Well, that's a good question. I do work with our national organization, the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies, and they go into women's prisons and they do advocacy visits. So they meet with women while they're being incarcerated. They listen to their complaints. They look for ways in which the system is failing them or breaking the law or violating people's rights, which happens more times than that I could count. So we sign on with them. I myself have done a prison advocacy visit, so I have that experience. Even just walking into a federal institution, it does change you, because before I worked in this field, I too had a certain, image of our correctional system that somehow people got the help that they need in prison, and they don't. And so, the work to be done in a halfway house is kind of overwhelming because people are coming out with very high needs. I think we're a little bit underfunded for the needs of the people that we're seeing, but we do the best that we can. It's just the system is really broken already. So I don't know what's going to take to make it better. Certainly, I have a lot of ideas about how we can collapse this capitalist system and rebuild something better, but I don't think most people are going to sign on to that.
At least not during this podcast.
Not during this podcast, but I do want to, and every opportunity that I have, I'd like to tell people that our prison system is broken, and there aren't people having an easy ride, getting PhDs on taxpayer dollars. That's not happening. People are being harmed. Well, especially women are being harmed while they're incarcerated, and that's just a fact. And we've participated in a lot of research, and we published a paper that highlighted the intersection between race, trauma, and incarceration. And across the country, those are the people that those are the women that we have locked up. Women who have histories of trauma, a high degree of women who are racialized, and add mental health or addictions on there, and you've got a group of women who have been disenfranchised, harmed before they went to prison, and in an institution that's not going to help them.
So we've talked about trauma extensively there, but I just want to sort of dive in a bit deeper, and maybe we can get Tina to answer, how does that type of trauma shape the reentry experience for women, and sort of what supports do you have available to help them with that challenge?
Thank you. Good question. I can't agree more with everything Kelly has said. There really is a lack of supports when you come out. I myself was a person who was incarcerated for about 6.5 years, came out to the E-Fry halfway house, and any of the supports that were in place, mental health supports at the time, were while I was on parole, and they were governed by Corrections Service of Canada, meaning that anything that I was trying to access support for, a report was written and could be used against me and possibly jeopardize my freedom. So there was an ability to be authentic and ask for help for things that I really needed help with. And there's such a huge gaping hole in the system where therapy is inaccessible for so many reasons. For free therapy, there's like very, very long wait lists, and the cost is a barrier for anyone else trying to access therapy. And just the lack of mental health supports inside, the trauma of being inside, coming out, being so overwhelmed with all of the parole conditions you have to abide by, like a curfew and call-ins and always stating your location and random urinalysis and mandatory programming that you have to do, make it really, really, really difficult to try and focus on employment, to try and focus on rebuilding your life. So it's very difficult to balance all of that.
I'd love to explore more about sort of the services that that both organizations provide once someone has come out of the criminal justice system, is in a halfway house, and we're trying to help them rebuild their lives. Can we talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the skills that they're gaining to really be ready for employment? Kelly, perhaps you want to start.
Sure. We have a lot of counseling programs that are outside of our halfway house or community residential facility. And women who access those counseling programs, they can speak freely to their counselor, and whatever is said is not reported back to Corrections Canada, so it doesn't impede their ability to gain their freedom once their parole is over. And so that's a big key, a separation of who gets to talk to your therapist or know everything that you've said to your therapist. We've had different types of employment programs, employment readiness programs. We've had entrepreneurship programs. We have an entrepreneurship program that's going on right now because a lot of women who've come out of the system just have given up on conventional employment. And this program teaches people everything from budgeting to making a business plan to what would you need to start your own micro business.
Fantastic.
And we also have right now a record suspension program. And that program helps people with their pardons. So you have to be 5 years past your charges. And once you're 5 years past your charges with no other charges, you are eligible for a pardon, or your record is suspended. That's why it's called record suspension. And we're funded to pay for all the costs and paperwork and help people fill out the paperwork so that they can have their record expunged, because having a criminal record is such a barrier to everything that you need to work out, to successfully come back into a community. So you need a job, you need housing. Those are the two, first steps. And if you have a criminal record that's going to prevent you from getting housing, then or a job, then what are your options? There aren't many. And we also have a housing program. So to try to eliminate that barrier of attaining safe, affordable housing, which is hard with a record.
Kelly, when you talk about having your record expunged, does that mean like it never happened? So when you're asked, have you ever been arrested, you can mark no because it's never happened? Well,
the question that people can ask is if you have a criminal record, they can ask that. And
okay.
Once you've had your record suspended, you can tick no. It doesn't mean if somebody point blank asks you if you've ever been arrested, that's a violation because you could have been arrested and not convicted of your charges, right? So there are many people who have been arrested and they don't have a criminal record, and that's they can honestly say that they don't have a criminal record. So, and
is it constitutional for employers to ask and to be denied employment based on having a criminal record?
Well, so you can just be not a good fit, right? I mean, I could. That's been, that's what people say. That's what racist people say when they don't want to hire someone of color. If you look too old for what the position is or the company, or if you look too young, those are all protected status, right? But people just how many times have we heard you're just not a good fit or you're not the right fit?
I've heard it plenty of times, Kelly. That's why I produce podcasts. Okay.
So, understanding that when you say our preconception of what the justice system is like, that's one stigma that is wrong in terms of the fact that it is much less supportive and much less positive experience, I guess, in terms of how it can work to reshape you. But on the other end, when people are re-entering into the workplace, the stigma we have is this is a potential reoffender. This is somebody that you will not be able to trust, who has potential trauma issues. What are the more real versions of what a good candidate for workplace reentry and for community reentry really does look like?
That's an interesting question. Yeah. I don't actually know the answer to that, because what does a good candidate look like? It is the same as any person is, regardless of whether they have a criminal record or not. Someone who's there and has the skills and the education to do the job properly. And I think that's something that's lacking too. There's this idea that there's all this great training for us while we're in prison and we have access to education and we get skills and we come out and we're able to join the workforce. And that's not the case at all. We have to get a GED while we're inside if we don't already have our high school diploma. And that's it. There's very little training opportunities. So folks, myself included, are coming out without any access to education, without any access to skills training, and expected to do differently and behave differently. And we have such a lack of options. In my own journey, I came out, I think I violated parole 3 times. In the first 2 releases, I had nothing. I had no access to anything, mental health supports inside or skills training to give me the ability to do anything differently. And I failed both times miserably. My 3rd time around, I started to access education. I worked with a program called Walls to Bridges, which teaches university and college courses inside jails and prisons. And that kind of gave me the confidence to pursue my education and then totally changes the trajectory of my life. And I came out and I became a social worker. So unless we are giving people things to make changes, people can't change. It's even worse now. We're in a housing crisis, lack of mental health supports. It's more difficult than ever for folks to come back out into society.
If I'm to answer your question more directly, but I actually think that Tina gave a great answer. I think one of the things that for someone who is trying their best, given the circumstances of the broken system, to rebuild their lives, oftentimes giving someone a chance makes a difference. So, if you can look beyond the criminal record to the candidate to see what skills and abilities they're bringing to the job, if you're looking at somebody, if as a potential hire who has a criminal record, you have before you a survivor, someone who's got excellent survival skills. And how do you use those skills for the greater good in your company or with your organization? You are also, when you give someone an opportunity, it really boosts people's self-esteem. And, just that an employer saw, like I've met women, and I am sure Tina has too, where, they've been looking for jobs. It's one of their parole goals, because you have to come up with goals. It was one of their goals, and they've applied for all kinds of work, some work they didn't even want, but they applied for it anyway. And been told no, and employers that, wouldn't look at them as soon as they ticked that they had a criminal record. And, that they finally got an opportunity with a company. They were thrilled. It boosted them and their self-esteem, and they worked their asses off for these companies. They were like, I've seen women soar. There's one woman that I can think of who, took a course in project management and got on with a construction company and is doing amazing work. Her career is really taking off. But to get there, to have someone just not say no based on your criminal record, that's the key. And you will get people who are so damn thankful for having work, because it is a cornerstone to being independent and having a healthy life and being a contributing member to society. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want that. I don't.
Well, that's very interesting to me, because I think that, from my perspective, when I'm looking to hire somebody, I'm looking for attitude more than aptitude. I'm looking for somebody who I know is appreciative of opportunity, who's looking to say, what can I do with this opportunity? How do I show that, I want this as much as you want somebody who's going to do a great job? And that's frankly a bit lacking right now in the talent pool that's out there. Everybody seems to be more about, I'm looking for this job for my status, my, stepping stone to the next thing. Here's what I think I'm entitled to, versus somebody who says, I'm looking for somewhere where I belong, where I'm accepted, where I can contribute, where I can be part of a team. So I was sort of fishing for that answer as well as Tina's great answer, but something along the lines of somebody who's going to say, you don't know how much I appreciate this. And that's, as an employer, the type of person you want on board. They can learn skills, they can learn processes, but just the fact that they want to be there and are appreciative of opportunity is the type of person an employer will thrive with.
Exactly. I mean, the workforce is changing, right? The workforce is drastically changing.
I want to talk sort of maybe directly to business owners, that are watching this, and this idea that, more than just the right thing to do, that it makes good business sense, and we've touched on, this idea of, it's going to, you're going to build loyalty, there isn't going to be as much turnover, because the people that are there really want to be there. But maybe we can talk to businesses directly about, again, some of those misconceptions, some of that perceived risk that they might have, in hiring somebody, who has a criminal record. Can we talk directly to that? Tina or Kelly, whichever you prefer.
I'll let Kelly go.
Okay. Feel free to jump in and add anything, Tina, if you think I've left something out. I think that for business owners, I think the thing to remember is that people who've been incarcerated, I think sometimes we have this idea that they can't be trusted. They can't be trusted around money. A lot of people have been incarcerated and they have their offenses have nothing to do with theft or money. Nothing. So maybe if it did, it was because they had an addiction that they might not have anymore. Chances are they don't if they're on full parole. Employees without criminal records can steal from you. So that's one thing. The other piece that people focus on is public safety when they are talking about hiring people with a criminal record, that they feel somehow unsafe. And I think that that is also about stigma. I think that particularly for women, you're not unsafe. In fact, a lot of women are unsafe in the workplace, and women with criminal records are even more unsafe, because if someone is going to sexually harass them in the workplace, chances are they're not going to say anything. They're going to find another job and leave quietly. So the thing that I'm going to say to employers is that there is this overlooked pool of resources of people who have been formerly incarcerated, who are trying to rebuild their lives, and they just need a job to help them do it. And you're probably going to get one of the best employees you've ever had by taking a chance on someone with a criminal record, because they can't work in the community if Correction Services Canada hasn't said that it's safe for the public for them to be there. And that's a really high bar. And I don't know really that many people who are looking for work with a criminal record are people who are innately dishonest or going to steal from you. I think that generally speaking, especially women who are reintegrating into a community are just trying to rebuild their lives. They're trying to get their families back together. They're trying to reconcile with community. And those are the types of employees that I personally want.
Absolutely. And I think it's also benefiting the community as a whole. This idea of, these individuals, they live in your community right now, but the idea of being able to give them a stable income is going to, obviously it's going to, create stability in their lives. You're going to see less recidivism, and, it can only benefit the community as a whole.
So as a business owner, what I would say to that is that, the ones that are successful, business owners that are successful, their investment isn't just in their profit. It's in building community. It's been collaborating with other businesses. It's in serving their community in a way that is is beneficial and adds value. And I think that considering this resource of talent in terms of hiring is another way that you can show your involvement in the community. You can tell your community that this is something that you're undertaking and that you feel good about it, and to break stigma. You feel great as an employer about helping somebody who is in a special situation of need. And this is all in line with your values as a business, not even just to share it with the community, but just in terms of your own personal mantra and goals as a business owner is to improve the world in some way. So that's what I would tell business owners from my perspective, is to say, this is part of your creed. This is part of your mission statement, is to improve overall communities. And this is one great way to do it. I wish there were more ways that businesses could get behind the advocacy in changing the system and creating more awareness for how broken the system is and how it is just a giant rug that people are getting swept under and having a hard time finding their way back out from under. So would look for those resources. And I can understand that's a very hard campaign to drive when, the establishment is not really ready for you to shine a light on all their dark crevices. But certainly interested in how we could be supportive from a small business standpoint as well, beyond just hiring.
Hey, could I give out a shout out to two companies that give our women a chance here in Toronto?
100%.
So Peak Freens hires our women. It's factory work at the Peak Freens cookie factory, but it's still work, and we appreciate that. And also Lush Canada.
Oh, wow.
Those are two companies that hire our women regularly. And I think we've had a partnership with both of them for, I think, almost 20 years. It is factory work. It's still work. And we really appreciate.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
So I have
It
a
talks
question
about
about
the
that.
company. Go ahead, Damon.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you talk about those great partnerships, do you have alignment with any employment agencies, or are you facing the same stigma there where they're saying this is not the product that we're looking for?
Oh, we don't work with any employment agencies. They've not been willing to work with us. It's that they want too much intrusive information about somebody and their criminal record, and I feel that that's not appropriate. We pride ourselves on sending appropriate referrals to employment opportunities to our partners, and we've chosen to work with the partners who are not intrusive about. We're going to screen them depending on what are their charges and how long ago were their charges, and and I think that is dehumanizing to people. If we have a partnership with you and we say that this person is employment ready for this type of work that you have available, then either you trust us and we work overtime really well in that, and with those two employers we've had a really good success rate. I still have people who are working for those companies. Some of them are managers that started working on the line in the Peak Freens factory. So we do take pride in having good referrals and building partnerships with people. But if you are a company that's going to want to control if you're very risk averse and you're not ready to hire people with criminal records, then that's okay, and just say that. But don't, be picking between, well, I don't know if I like that this person, this was their offense, and I think that that's none of the employer's business. I think, what if if you think about the worst thing that you ever did in your life, and maybe you didn't get arrested for it, but think about that. The worst day you had, and you had to disclose that to your employer before they gave you the job. Think
It would be
about
like
that.
asking somebody, what did you get fired for your last job for?
Right.
Like, what was you did for your last employer that made them fire you?
Yeah, exactly. So why should that be an expectation, right? That, I don't know.
What sets Lush and Peak Freens, what sets them apart? Why do you think they've made that decision, to be inclusive in their hiring practices?
Well, I think what I understand about both companies is that they have family members who have experience of incarceration. And so somewhere in leadership at some point. And they understand that everyone is capable of making a mistake. And should their life be destroyed from there on? So oftentimes it takes something hitting home before a company will make an altruistic decision to work with us. But it's not the only reason, I suppose. I think both of those companies are very community-minded, very community-invested, and they see people with criminal records as part of our community, as they are. And so why not hire them?
Because everyone deserves a second chance.
Everyone deserves a second chance. And we should never be, like, just imagine a world where we are all judged for the worst thing we ever did.
I don't want to think about that, Kelly.
I know, it makes everyone so uncomfortable, right? Even if you didn't get arrested for it.
That's too many to pick from,
if you think about that, because we've all made mistakes. None of us
Absolutely.
are beyond judgment, right?
Absolutely. It's just been a fantastic conversation. As we're wrapping up, Tina, any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Well, that was nice, short and sweet. I like that, Tina. Okay.
So Tina's very humble. Tina has not given you the force of Tina, because she has, she did talk briefly about being formerly incarcerated, but the fact that she got an education despite the system that didn't really want her to get an education, didn't really want her to succeed. And I think that it's kind of fitting that she was once in our halfway house, but she is now on our board of directors. And she's using her voice to change things in the future for women who are coming out of the prison system. So.
Well, again, Tina, it seems like, again, you're a perfect example of someone when given the opportunity, can do great things.
I guess I could add that it still actually is a barrier for employment to me. Even though I have a bachelor, I have a college diploma, I have a master's, I have 10 years of work experience. I keep applying for positions at a local university that I'm fully qualified for, counselor and case management positions. And in the application process, there's that one question that always pops up. Have you been convicted of a crime for which you have not received a pardon? And I don't have a pardon as yet. And it's a mandatory question. You can't complete your application without answering that question. And so every time I say yes, I have not gotten one interview. I've applied to over 20 positions that I'm more than qualified for. So it really follows us. And no matter, where we are, that criminal record is still there.
Small side story, years and years ago, when I was in my 20s, on applications, they would not say, have you ever been incarcerated or convicted of a crime? The phrase was, are you bondable? And so many people that I knew didn't know what that meant, so just wrote no, not realizing what they were saying, and couldn't understand why they weren't getting jobs. And it's so interesting that they would, I don't know why they used that phrase or whether they weren't allowed to say something different.
Right.
But yeah, that phrase, are you bondable, is just another word for saying, do you have a criminal record? But it's amazing. Damon, any final thoughts from you?
I really enjoyed this conversation. It's enlightening. I don't know whether it's a question of using this great information to keep people from taking for granted the opportunity they have, from trying to avoid incarceration in the first place, or humanizing more of what's happening in these institutions and the people that are able to come out and try and re-enter in the workplace. It's all very important that everybody hears this information. So we're happy to support the awareness from a Pros and Conversations point of view, and we're really appreciative of you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. about how businesses can support individuals reintegrating in society and dispelling, many of the myths and misconceptions out there. It's been a really eye-opening conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to my co-host Damon for helping us explore this important issue.
Glad to be here.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for being part of the conversation. Be sure to follow Pros and Conversations wherever you get your podcasts, or check out this video version on YouTube to see all our smiling faces. Subscribe, leave a review, but most importantly, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. So for Damon, Kelly, and Tina, I'm Peter Reynolds. You've been listening to Pros and Conversations, and we'll see you next time.